Welcome to the January 14, 2019 Policy Committee meeting. We're here in the barn boardroom. Everyone's here with the exception of Dr. Yanni. He got called away on other district business, but he did give us some of his thoughts and comments on the policies for today. So I don't think we have any minutes because we didn't have the December meeting. So we can go right into the policy report and recommendations. We have a couple of policies that we had a first reading for back in the December legislative meeting. So we can review those at first. Starting with policy 006. This is meetings. Did anybody have any changes to this? Okay. And again, that's for second reading.
Dr. Yanni did make a comment, but I'm not inclined to reopen that discussion. He didn't give any reason for his
What's his comment?
His comment was, so we added a paragraph about the elected public officials.
That's where I'm looking.
Yeah. And his suggestion was that if they don't, let me bring up the actual comments.
If they don't communicate, that they would still be able to speak to the public. That's what the statements were.
And we discussed that at length
Yep.
last time. He didn't give any new reasons. I'm not sure.
There was no rationale.
Seems like he's changing his position on that, but I'm not inclined to.
Right, because I don't think that's what he'd said before, so, but yeah, I don't see any reason to change it, so, okay.
Well, did he have some concerns about the way it's worded right now?
He had just said that he would allow, the comment, if seated elected officials, if a seated elected official does not coordinate with the board president or superintendent to find a designated time to speak, he or she would still have the opportunity to speak during public input. So that's a fairly significant change from what we have spoken, from what that paragraph obviously says. So,
Well, I think we should discuss it a little bit more. I mean, if the governor shows up to our meeting.
that's obviously not what's going to happen. And if the governor shows up, we could always add that person to the agenda.
Well,
So I think-
are we unique in adding this one paragraph? Mr. Ruth?
I'm not aware of anybody else that has one, but that's because their policy would be they wouldn't be allowed to speak.
They what?
The policy in the other district would be they wouldn't be allowed to speak if they weren't a resident.
Right, our policy isn't any different than other school districts that wouldn't allow a
Yeah.
non-taxpayer.
This is actually, you're actually expanding the entitlement of an elected official who doesn't live in the district to speak beyond what any other school district does. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Now, I will say, in my honesty, I'm not sure how many other school districts actually thought of this.
And we can always waive the policy.
Correct. And I've seen districts do that, where they had some compelling reason to waive the policy, but I'm not residency station. I'm pretty sure the governor showing up at a meeting would probably be a reason to do that, but.
Or one could amend the agenda to add another item on.
Mhm.
I mean, I think part of it is because of how we handle public input. The fact that during public input, we let someone get up there and speak for 4 minutes uninterrupted, essentially, unless something is said that's, in violation of the civility policy or local board procedure or something like that. It's not a dialogue back and forth. So, I think that's one of the things that, like what Ken was saying, that what we're doing in our policy is we're actually putting in a provision. If one of our officials would like to speak, all they have to do is contact the district or the board president.
Okay.
And that's not what other districts do. They wouldn't necessarily allow them still to be on the agenda even if someone contacted them ahead of time.
I don't know if that's really the case, but, and we were going to distribute that to our locally elected legislators. That statement, so that they know.
We could distribute it, just tell them.
Right.
Just tell them.
And I think, with what's behind this is you don't want to be ambushed. So you're just going to, I think my suggestion would be in the interest of better communication, you would just say, look, don't do that. I mean, next time you're going to come, you need to tell us. You can't just show up and expect to speak. Next time you come, tell us, and we'll get you on the agenda. Don't just show up and speak from a comment unannounced. That's all. That's a communication. That's not I would not recommend just saying, enclosed, please find copy of policy, da, 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 da. That would be a bad idea.
Okay.
Okay? Makes sense?
So if one of our legislators shows up to a meeting, they could not speak unless they talk to us prior.
Well, it says should contact the board president to arrange for designated time. If they show up 5 minutes before the meeting and you don't have any problem with speaking, you say, fine, we'll just speak next time. You give me a little bit more of a heads up.
So should,
Because
doesn't-
you want to be able to speak, if they're going to come up and speak about something,
Right.
you want everybody to be prepared, so in case somebody, has some other information.
so should doesn't say must.
Should does not say must.
Okay.
But they're still not eligible to speak in public comment unless they're a resident or
Right.
taxpayer.
If the president showed up, we wouldn't let him speak during public input. He could get on the agenda.
You definitely do not want the president to speak in public about something you have no idea what he's doing.
Exactly.
I don't care who the president is. You don't want that for anybody.
No problem. That's about it in there, okay?
All right. So that goes forward for second reading.
Yeah.
And then we have policy 324, personnel files. Steve didn't, he said he was fine with the policy as written. All right. Anything, Art?
No.
Anything, Tom? This is your area. Anything to change?
No, I'm reading through it. I think it's fine with the changes that we want to make.
Okay.
Only thing that I thought of is we talked before about, the personnel file really is district property. And sometimes I know we can get in trouble with pronouns, but is there any problem with just changing it from their personnel file to the personnel file?
Where you are you? Oh, the new.
Delegation
category.
throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of throughout.
Okay.
It's a minor suggestion, but
That's fine.
thinking that way you don't have to worry about his or her over there.
No.
And it also, I think, conveys the personnel file. It's
Didn't you
not
decide
an ownership type of thing.
Well, we have there.
Was there already an editorial decision made that they need to go with singular they from now on? Thought we did that.
Say what was it?
I don't think I was in the room if that
I
happened,
don't
but
think we said
it's-
that.
it
Yeah.
does seem like something we might do.
Yeah, I agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, so anytime we see it, we're going to correct it. I'll do this, I'll take care of it.
Okay. So in this one, I think we're just saying the personnel file instead of their personnel file. That's instead of making it
Yep.
the employees. Is that, okay.
Are you there?
Yep.
Okay, you're just going to take out the word there. Okay.
Okay. All right, that was the policy. Anything for the AR?
I have.
Yeah, just a typo. In the third paragraph, right above the word, the new section appeals, we have "and may." There's two mays
Oh, I
instead of
see.
may make. Copies.
Maybe.
May.
Employee X.
Right above appeals.
Keep, is the last sentence in there? Yeah. The employee of the
Maybe.
sentence above appeals.
Right above appeals.
Oh,
May.
there you go. Got it.
I actually do have another one. I just.
Oh, it's probably the main
It's in the AR.
Maybe.
Oh,
In the
say
AR.
may.
In the
I'm
AR.
changing that to main make. I
Mhm.
think that's what
Uh,
that
second.
Yes.
Yes. Under maintenance of personnel files in the AR, Second item says medical records shall be kept in a separate file from the employee's personnel file. Tom, are these paper files?
Yeah, we are.
And are they to be continued as paper files? I'm not sure, the reason I ask is I'm not sure what separate file would mean for electronic records.
Yeah, well, medicals are definitely paper files, and we do keep a separate set for medical records. We are just beginning to roll out employees that are filling in for electronic documents. But right now, we're still printing those out and including where we're required to. So we're not 100% electronic, but we're just starting that process.
This could change, this is made out, right? It could change
Yeah.
once that practice changes. Or we could try to future-proof, I don't have good wording at the moment, because I don't know what we're trying to achieve, but we could try to future-proof this by changing this wording to something else. But I'm not, what do you think is what's the intent of keeping a separate file? If it's paper files, why do they need to be separate files?
Medical is because of HIPAA regulations, and people that don't have a need to see medical information has to be kept separate.
So the wording could say something to the effect that it's not, so this isn't necessarily under maintenance, but under employee access, for right to inspect, that only the appropriate files will be shown per, to stay in conflict with regulations about
Employee can see his or her
Yeah,
medical.
maybe not, maybe not
Yes.
under employee access, it's just under access, maybe there's something about access. It could be in the maintenance section, but when files are accessed, only the minimum, it's the principal police privilege that you only show what needs to be shown. Could be the general statement. Instead of prescribing a solution here, we could just specify what it is we're trying to achieve. But I'm not sure that that's worth doing, but once we get to electronic records, the concept of separate file is kind of meaningless, so
Might be folders,
This would
essentially.
be different font name.
since I don't have a good solution
I think
at the
Right.
moment,
I
and
think it's
because,
okay for
because
now.
it works for our current system, let's leave it alone. But this is going to need changing in the future.
Do- Brenda, we always charge 25 cents to make a copy of anything these days? Or, we have here 25 cents, it just seems.
We rarely make copies anymore, and sometimes it's been a
Well, when somebody do a right to know, and they come in and look at something and we charge them.
This is under employee access.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has been 25 cents in the past. I don't know what other districts are doing. Typically, everything is scanned anymore. I can't tell you the last time we officially charged for that. It's been 2 or 3 years.
Are you thinking about making it more?
No, that's,
Oh, you make it less, I would make it more.
Well, I would say you can get rid of the specificity of it, just put it at a cost. Designate.
Well-
I'm sure, and you need something.
and there is labor, there is pulling it out.
It is, yeah.
It's like this in request 10 times.
Yes.
Come in every week.
Well,
Well, they can only request it once a year, I think.
Yeah, it's
We have something in there.
And you know what, Michelle just reminded me, probably in Director of People Services, because of student records and that, they probably make more copies and charge.
We charge 25 cents.
Go back to check that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I just,
But since it's only once a year that an employee can request, maybe you do want to waive it. It's up to you. You don't have to worry about the same abuses that you would for
Right to know.
cheaper, well, not just right to marijuana, definitely people service records.
What do you guys want to do?
So you strike it. I don't, if we're not charging anyway.
Is that in the policy?
That's
Or
in
is
the
it
AR.
Where's the once a year?
It's the same as with both fields.
I thought I read.
Maybe it's there somewhere.
Is it in what's your?
Right there.
Why don't you say for,
Oh, there it is, that's the paragraph 7.
Is it in there?
for,
Yeah.
why don't you just make
So-
why don't you just make the charge if you have the, reasonable cause for more frequent inspection. If you're gonna get them, you take out the charge. And maintain copies of any records at no cost, period.
Are there hundreds of pages in these files?
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, what are we talking
Yeah,
about?
Tom, how many pages are in a typical?
Personnel.
Depending on how well the employees are employed here, it gets lengthier each and every year because, evaluations are included in there. And we actually keep track of tuition and additional credits that employees
Are we looking at dozens of pages or hundreds of pages?
Work here.
For,
Our
Yeah, he's talking about employees.
Our senior employees, I mean, you're talking about a personnel file about that thing. So it's 100 pages would not be.
How often do you have a request?
I think we maybe get under a dozen a year.
They don't typically happen when someone's being disciplined or terminated or about to be terminated. That's what you're saying.
Specifically in those cases, but sometimes just out of the blue, someone will say, can I come in and look at my personnel file?
I mean, if your concern was someone's going to come in and say, well, since they're not charging me for records, I'll request the whole file, but if you're going to charge me for records, I only want 10 pages.
that was exactly what I was thinking.
Well, then why don't you simply say at a cost of 25 cents per page for each page in excess of 30 records, 30 pages.
That's a reasonable solution.
Okay.
For each page in excess of 30, just pick that number.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Tom.
Tom?
25?
Probably 25 is probably a good number. Usually they're selective about specifically the piece they want. You're not asking for the whole person.
Yeah, but if you want, I want to inspect this later, or, I just want to stick it to the, so that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that way you're not getting on their like payroll check thing, because there are letters of recommendation available or something like that. You're just getting the discipline memo they want to see.
Yep.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, then that's for second reading and approval for the AR. Overtime, 3:30.
Just a typo under delegation of responsibility. I think we wanted to be the superintendent or instead of or designate.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve had that comment, and he also felt that the word applicable under the last paragraph under guidelines, which appears twice, is not needed.
Or the AR.
That's a policy.
It's not in the policy of the AR.
It's the
Oh,
policy.
policy.
It conflicts with any applicable collective bargaining agreement or individual employment contract in terms of the, okay, you could say in terms of that collective bargaining agreement. So you change the applicable to that.
Drop the first applicable and change the second to that.
What? So you're going to say, you're taking out the applicable when it's.
Well, that would basically, that would achieve what Steve's looking for. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
You need it because you have multiple collective bargaining agreements.
Right,
You can't.
which collective bargaining
Yeah,
agreement
to
to be.
determine you need it there.
Okay. So,
So you leave that sentence line.
just leave it alone.
The next line. you're
This
taking
line?
out- Yes, take out the word "the applicable" and substitute the word "that."
That.
Need a space.
Conflicts with any applicable bargaining or the terms of that collective bargaining or, okay.
All right. Anything else, guys?
What do you mean by shall control?
take precedence. You like that better?
It just didn't sound right.
Yeah, I had to say, I was looking for an object to verb, but
I
yeah.
heard you. The term of applicable collective bargaining agreement, which shall,
Yeah, I mean, it's like legal,
hmm?
legalese kind of.
Shall control visually
No, okay, shall take precedence.
take precedence.
You get a little word, it says shall supersede.
Right.
Which word am I using?
Where, at the very end where it says
Take
shall,
precedence.
change that to shall take precedence.
That's fine, it doesn't matter. I mean,
Yeah.
All right. So then we got the AR.
all right.
This was reviewed in November, and we decided there were no changes.
Right, so we were good. Yeah, that's what, we don't have to.
So we just didn't approve it?
Right, because we were the first reading.
We were waiting for the second.
Yeah, but we discussed it at the board meeting, or at that committee
Well,
meeting.
you
so.
know,
There's nothing to approve, it's not changeable.
Right,
Yeah.
Oh, so we don't even need to approve?
Or is it
You
easier?
should not put it on the agenda.
is it new? It's not new?
Well, your minutes say reviewed on November 26, 2018, with no change recommended.
Let's, I mean, because it was, I think it's new though, right?
No,
we just-
We haven't approved it yet. Yeah.
Okay, no changes, no changes to the draft. right?
Exactly.
Right.
There you go. Yep.
Sorry, I should have said
No, it's all right.
we're,
It's just, we were making a note, but we did discuss it. You know, have to go line by line again, unless we really want to. So, all right, so we'll do second reading, adoption, and then approval for the AR. All right. What's the board meeting, what's the date for what?
The 28th,
Okay,
January
28th,
28th.
yeah. Change the schedule, so my brain's not working with that. All right, so now we're up to first readings, reviews, that type of thing. So first one is medical examinations policy 314, 414, 514.
I had nothing.
I had a question under authority,
Mhm.
third paragraph. At any point during the employee's employment with the district, the board may require the employee to undergo a special medical examination. Is it going to be at the request of the board or the HR director?
Well, the board, the HR director puts it on the agenda for approval. The school code only allows the school board, the school code says that it's the school board that has to request it. So when it comes, gets put on your agenda as a personnel item,
Okay.
but it does have to be approved by the board.
Okay, well, that's
Fine.
why
Just
we're
wanted to
doing
make
it.
sure.
All right, that makes sense, 'cause that did make sense, yeah, I agree. Yeah, Steve had that question, and then I think he had something else about syntax.
Yeah, it was the same place.
Okay.
I think the employee's employment, or the employee, I think he wanted to change the employee to
Oh, he or she,
he, she, or we're doing that.
they.
Singular they, or however. But I think that,
Yeah, I think, I'd rather have a date or that. I don't think it matters.
Ken, some things are being combined with 314, 414.
It doesn't bother me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when we
we keep it.
list them, will they, when we make the 300s, is there a number that's assigned when we combine all three? Or is it just written like that, 314, 414, 514?
Okay, well, for the moment,
Yeah, we're
let's check
gonna-
it. For the moment, there are three different policies.
yes.
We're
Yeah.
combining all of them.
So you're combining all into one, and you need to repeal 414 and 514.
So it's going to be numbered, I think Michelle's question was, will it be numbered 314? Is that?
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
so what, are we
Well,
trying
we-
to do just the 300s for employment now and getting rid of the 4s and 5s? Is that the plan? I think that's the plan, yes.
Does that mean to repeal?
You
So then
repeal
with-
414 and 514, and you should rename 300 policies applicable to all employees,
Okay.
which you can do as a policy committee.
Right, we can change that. Okay, so if you're all good with this, that's what we'll do. We'll rename the 300 employees or policies that,
If and when we go electronic file, this policy will also have to be reviewed per Mark's request.
right, yes.
I wasn't going to say that.
No,
Just all the
there's a
same
whole
ones.
nother.
But we still will need to repeal.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, so we will repeal,
414, 514.
We have to do a first repeal and a second repeal.
yep, which works because this is a first reading, so we will do a. Employees, okay. All right, we're good?
Yeah, except in authority, the very last paragraph, is menace the right word? A substantial menace to the health of others to get?
Probably the statute is my guess.
Is it a substantial risk?
It's up to you, that's something that PSB is working.
Risk, I like risk better than menace.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
Menace is kind
Menace
of
is
fun.
Not a menace.
Intent.
Should I change that?
Annotation.
Yeah,
Change it to risk, then,
yeah. Is that something?
Working for it.
It's right above guidelines.
right above guidelines.
The sentence
Very
right above
bottom.
guidelines. Substantial menace.
Risk is fine.
Risk is
That's in there.
Okay.
Secretary of Health has to determine that.
Yeah.
All right.
What happens quickly?
Gifts and discounts, 322. We're gonna go first reading for 314 and first
Okay.
repeal for 414.
Oh, 3:30,
What?
Go ahead.
back to the agenda just for 1 second. We didn't say it when we were at the second reading, but the 324 and the 330, that's the same thing, they have to be renamed and then repealed in the
Okay,
four.
so anytime we see the,
500s, yeah.
from here on out, anytime we see the 300s, that it's a standing rule essentially that we're gonna be repealing the 4s and 5s.
So,
Rename and repeal.
so we'll do a second reading. No, we have to,
We'll do a first repeal then for 324, assuming there is a 424. Is there a 424?
Just check the index.
There is, okay.
for each.
And same with the 30.
So it can be a first reading repeal first.
Yeah, that's fine.
Can we also make sure we review any past ones that we might have missed? I'm not sure.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's gonna be all, so we'll have to look and see
Yeah.
what, because how
I'll
many.
be sending the index to you guys so you can see.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we're just starting 300s. That's the, I mean, there's going to be ones that we've made changes to, but we are now starting the 300s because we have finished with the 600s. We've been
Yep.
obviously going through these in specific order. Okay. All right, so 314 cents, so gifts and discounts. So we were discussing this last time.
I have a minor comment on the policy.
Just tomorrow.
Okay.
You have major, you just did major comments first.
My comments are from the AR. Yeah, my comments from the air, so all right.
So under the definitions, we have definitions for gift and discount. My first thought is, did these really belong here in the AR? Assuming they belong here, the definition of gift says a nominal value threshold was set in the accompanying AR, but we don't say anything similar to that for discount. We do actually have something in the AR for discount. We need that sentence. In the policy for defining discount in the AR, it says substantially below will be defined in the accompanying administrative regulation.
So that whole last sentence?
Or do we just delete the sentence from the previous one? Like, I just feel like they should be consistent in the way they do.
No, it's
If we don't need the sentence, I'm always a fan of deleting rather than adding, but.
well, you want to empower the administration to establish the threshold, so.
About just putting that sentence below both of them and saying.
Yeah, where that, it'll be part of what's in the AR.
Yeah.
So the last
Yeah,
sentence,
that's
copy and paste it also under discount?
I would put it, no, what I think I would do is put it in, under delegation of responsibility. Shall implement the accompanying regulation which defines nominal nominal value threshold and market value. Or whatever the AR actually defines. Substantially below fair market. Defines nominal value and defines substantially below fair market value. So if what we're trying to do is empower the administration to define those terms, we should say that so explicitly in the delegation responsibility. Or just not define, or just get rid of the definition.
Right, I don't know if we need the definitions in, I mean,
That was my first thought.
I would,
I figured they were here for a reason. I just don't know what's there.
gifts and debt discount, can we just have it just defined in the AR?
So move these definitions to the AR.
Yeah.
Well,
Or,
let me do that.
yeah, he's gonna do that.
The policy says you're not allowed to take any gift.
That's the AR,
Where it could be again.
that's the AR.
Oh, okay.
All right, so are we good with the,
Just take the definition out of the policy.
we're throwing them in the AR?
Okay, so let me go back to policies.
Okay, so if you're good with putting the definitions into the AR, then we'll talk about the AR.
Right.
But that's a statement which is not really a definition of nominal value. That probably should be under, I agree, I think it should be under delegation responsibility, that we're empowering the administration to set a nominal threshold.
We don't even need to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we didn't use the word nominal value.
And then that's actually stated explicitly in the AR, so.
We only need to define nominal value, I agree. So we said it's unless, after the end of the policy, it's that this policy and which defines nominal value, which establishes
All right,
nominal value.
I guess I'm the authority, so, I mean, I guess that is part of this, are we?
Yeah.
So I don't have I mean, I guess this goes in the conversation with the AR and the policy, because we're putting in authority, we're saying you can only accept gifts of a nominal value and then defining, and having them define that. I mean, I don't have a problem with allowing our teachers, I mean, specifically, I mean, assistants, things like that, receiving gifts of more than, whatever we said as a nominal value, I guess, is the question. So like, I think $25 is pretty low, and I think that this is a pretty big culture change or shift for what our current practice is. And I'm more comfortable, and Steve and I were texting about this too, I think this is in his comments. I think he was gonna talk to me about it. To say, hey, if you want to, if we want to set something like this, have them disclose their gifts. We can have them disclose gifts at a certain level, but not necessarily limit or ban gifts at such a low threshold, because we're setting people up essentially that if
There should be a reason to disclose, like why, what would we do with that information?
right. So I mean, I think, well, if the concern is, the reason why we're banning them is what we're proposing to ban them is because we're worried that someone is going to receive favorable treatment or.
Right, so those go into the personnel file, so that later, if there was some accusation of favorable treatment, we say, aha, connect some dots.
Exactly. If there's some grade issues or things like that. I think there's different thing for different employees, right?
What if the same employee gets 30 nominal gifts from their class? I mean, then it starts to look like it's a concerted effort.
Right. So what's currently happening? I guess that's the question too, is what is currently happening with our teachers?
Well, not
Especially at the
this-
elementary school
not
level.
this.
Right,
They say thank you for the gift and that's it, right?
right,
Well, I mean, the truth is, we don't know, because they don't have to tell us.
right. But I think that,
So they say thank you.
Thank you.
yeah, and maybe it's different in the higher grades, in the high school and things like
I'm
that.
sure the band boosters give out significant gifts to the director and assistants. More than $25.
I mean,
Coaches.
we as a board
volunteer
give out more
coaches.
than that to the employees, right? I mean, when we do certain gifts and things like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, is there a problem that we're trying to fix? Do we see that there's an actual issue that we're having, and that's why we need to have this policy? And, I mean, again, I think
I
it's a
don't
pretty
think-
big
I don't-
change,
I-
so.
I don't think it matters whether we're aware of the current problem. I think we're trying to head off a potential problem. And it's a real potential problem. I
It
mean,
is.
Right, so you agree with Sarah?
I don't think so.
No, he doesn't.
No?
I mean, not on the whole, anyway. I mean, I think there's a genuine potential problem that someone can, give a teacher a substantial gift of, $10,000 for favorable treatment. And we want that not to happen.
Okay, well, I guess, and I think that's a different thing
Right.
than a $30 gift card to Walmart.
I agree.
Right, yeah,
But
so,
that we, with
right.
policy,
Well, it'd be so hard to enforce, I don't know how this would be.
right, enforcement is a big problem.
That's
right,
why
I don't
we-
wanna set up people that.
That's why we have Ken.
Right,
That's why we have a solicitor. Many, many years of
I don't
experience.
think that's what it's shown. I think we don't, how do we make sure people tell us?
right, I mean, no one's gonna
Oh,
tell
yeah, I don't
them,
know how
right?
they-
You can't track it.
No, I went a step before the Charles County. How do districts deal with this? Do you think of doing?
Right, we have a- I mean-
What they do is they communicate to the parent groups. These are our limits, so that the parents know that if they give a gift of X, that it's going to have to be disclosed and that there's a limit and all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
So once the parents know it, that tends to, then you're now limiting the universe of gifts to either gifts under the nominal threshold or to people who are consciously violating the threshold, and teachers who accept gifts in violation of the threshold and don't tell anybody. So you've taken a bigger problem and made it a smaller problem. And if you ever find out that that person has been taking bigger gifts, you now have somebody who's subject to discipline.
Right,
That's what the outcome is. When it's happened in other districts that I'm aware of, it is dramatically cut down the amount of gifts. People are getting Gucci handbags instead of.
right.
But when a class collects, when the parents of a third grade class collect $25 each and then give the teacher a substantial gift, is that considered $25?
Well, that's up to you to decide that.
How is it expensive?
The other issue is that you've got parents who think they have to do something. It's like, what am I supposed to, well, everybody else is giving this teacher a gift, so you're like, you don't want to look cheap.
Well, the
You don't
bus
want to
driver.
give
With a bus driver.
We're the bus driver, we're the,
We're the aide.
So that's the other, my suspicion is your homeroom parents are the ones who are asked, well, what are you supposed to do? So instead of the homeroom parent setting the threshold on what constitutes a reasonable and acceptable gift, you're establishing it. And you're making it uniform for all classrooms, all schools, and whatever, as opposed to the current system, which I'm going to assume is a very patchwork of, well, maybe this high in one class and this high in another and this low over there. That's all. You're imposing some consistency on the whole process. You will never catch everybody.
So I mean, I guess what's the goal of this? Is this goal to weed out corruption? Is it to have parents not feel that they need to give certain amounts and overextend them? Like, I guess that's what's the part, what are we trying to
Maybe it's
accomplish?
the corruption thing. I don't know that it's our problem to solve through policy
Right,
for the other thing. I mean, no, it's not a problem. I just,
right,
solving it through policy just seems like not the right use of policy
right.
to me.
Like, so, I mean, I think last time I called this the anti-corruption policy. So, I mean, I think that that's to me, the broad strokes of this and what are we trying to do here is to make sure that employees are not unduly influenced, right? And so we're really talking about teachers, and there's a whole nother level, I think, with administrators, right? I mean, that's a different thing, third-party vendors and stuff like that. I think we were talking about it last time. You go to conferences and people want to take you out to dinner or drinks or things like that. That's, I think, a different issue. I mean, it's similar with we don't want people to do things for bad reasons. or be influenced like that, but I think the overall impact is different with an administrator than with our teachers.
And it's like last month, usually this will come up in the teacher induction, because I familiarize them with all policies they should be aware of. And the question of what is nominal comes up. And, because nominal could be for one person, another for, and they want to do the right thing. So you're looking to provide some guidance for new teachers that are coming in. But I remember when I was a principal, a teacher received a donation of a couple $100 and clearly came to me saying, look, I feel uncomfortable accepting this. So I said, you know what, let's handle it the right way. We handled it through a donation to the school, and we made it purchase of a classroom library that all the kids could benefit from. And then the teacher was completely absolved from feeling at all guilty or thinking that I really shouldn't accept this. So I think it's those kinds of situations that hopefully, some policy and administrative regulations will provide some guidance so that people do the right thing and are in situations where they feel uncomfortable.
And we also have a couple of families here that every year donate really to the school district. That's how it has evolved, but it is in acknowledgement of certain teachers. And it's handled that way, which is very easy to administer from a business point of view. The teachers still get the credit and everything. The gift is purchased, but it is, again, as Tom was saying, for the students and not just to the individual. On a different level, which Art alluded to, bus drivers though, and some of the other groups that maybe handle students one-on-one, that may be a different thing that needs to be addressed. We still don't have the technology to monitor on a daily basis every single stop. We're getting closer to that. But I do worry that sometimes that drivers may be influenced, or other employees might be influenced by monetary gifts to make changes that might be favorable to some guardians rather than, to all.
For that large-scale corruption bit, it feels like it's solved by just setting a much higher threshold. But that doesn't address that kind of...
Well, I think it's a statement of you're not doing something due to it. I mean, or due to influence, or, I mean, I think it's a statement of that, is that, conduct yourself, regardless of if you receive a gift, don't let that influence your actions, essentially.
There must be something that says that already somewhere. No? Then, yes, I agree with you.
Okay, so we say that, we say don't be corrupt, right? Like don't act improperly because someone has given you something, regardless of the value. Because for somebody, getting a gift card for $50 would be changing their world, and a gift card for $500 would be it for another person, So regardless of the value, don't be corrupt.
All right, where does that go?
I don't know. And then the other thing is then the value of, all right, nobody gets a gift over this. Or if you get a gift over this, you have to disclose it,
I also recommend, this is a great topic, next time the PTA or leadership get together, so before we really finish this, we should...
Right, because that's the other thing, so, right, so does this count towards the PTAs when they give gifts to certain teachers, right? They'll put in, I know in Fort Washington, they'll put in like a sign-up genius, right? And say, these are all the different things that are being requested. Like they ask the teachers, what do we need? We've got $20,000 sitting here, what do you need? And someone says, I could use a new rug, or I could use this, and they all put it in, and
That goes
people...
to the
Yeah,
foundation.
just,
Right,
That's not me, that goes to the foundation.
No.
not PTAs.
Not-
That's even, but that's not,
but
that's
that's
not
to
a gift to
the
the, that's not a gift to the.
teachers, it's not
Right.
personal, that's to the...
Well, it's to their classroom, right? But
Well,
certain
that's-
teachers get it,
but
other
that's still-
teachers
that's
don't.
not-
But that's still not.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Well, why don't you suggest then perhaps you take this draft policy to the PTAs and get their input on it before you push it to first reading?
Okay, well, I think we need to that's fine. We just need to have an idea of what we want to do too. So, I
So it's
don't,
your concern not to put a threshold at all, though?
Well, I mean, I don't see a problem, I guess, with the threshold at a certain point, if you want to say you gotta disclose it.
Yeah.
And I don't have I mean, because I think that I think we can set the threshold. If you've received a gift that's not a class gift of a certain amount, you disclose it. You can accept it, but we gotta know about it, you know? And you don't have to, or you can reject it and you don't have to disclose it, and you can explain to the person. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to.
So I'm not an accountant, but I was just for fun looking at the IRS website and saying these de minimis, because I think that's what we're referring to, de minimis
Yes.
gifts, fringe benefits, et cetera. And so one statement says, the IRS has previously ruled in a particular case that items in the value exceeding $100 could not be considered de minimis even under unusual circumstances. So whether or not is there a mechanism maybe we could look to from the IRS to be able to say that they help us because that's supposed to be disclosed anyway?
But usually the IRS, I mean, I think you're now talking about, from my opinion, based on what the person's reporting on their own tax returns.
Agreed, yep.
It's not running through the school district. I don't have to worry about it being included on their W-2 or anything like that. It's not salary compensation.
Right.
So,
It's just giving us a
And
guide.
I'm just looking at it as a guideline to see,
Right.
you know, if that's what they're considering.
Right.
Exactly, yeah, helping us inform what might be considered a threshold for us that we'd be
Right.
comfortable setting. That's all I'm suggesting.
We were asked if we could, say what other districts are doing. Nominal in Lower Merion is 10.
$10.
Wow.
Well, they had a problem, just there.
Right.
We're doing that to a big district. And in GE, it is.
Well, okay, so, talking among ourselves, so do we want to revisit this policy and structure it in a way that's really about anti-corruption with wording to that effect? You can't be unduly influenced by
Right.
receive, is that, you know?
I'm good with that, so, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with, we want people not to do it, but we can also, I mean, I think that's one part of it, but also then, if we want to have it, you know, in de minimis, because I think that's the
Yeah.
term we're using.
But we could also push the policy as is, because that doesn't have the threshold limit,
Right.
right? I think our concern right now
Well, I
is
think we have to
that.
change the authority then, because I think in the ortho, it's a policy the board may only, accept only gifts and discounts of consumable nature or nominal value.
Yeah, so the real statement of authority is we're trying to.
So what is it?
Correct. Right, so that's the statement. that
GE
we're-
is $250.
See? There we go.
But is that for professional staff or all employees, Ken? All employees. Is it really?
Nice.
Discounts by employees. All.
If you're healthy enough, to eat your own bus stop down.
They put it in the cake.
I mean, you know, that's the thing, it's,
Instead of a baby.
this is a cultural shift, you know, it's like it.
So I think someone should do another draft and bring it back. That's right.
Should what?
Another draft.
Another draft and bring it back.
Yeah, I think that's a good
All
idea.
right,
Before we share,
this
I
is the
think we should come up with
anti-corruption,
something.
yeah,
Make sure it's BTO, BTI.
right,
Leadership.
I like this.
So this is coming back to committee.
Well, so I think the idea is we want an anti-corruption, but then I think also that's a conversation we need to have with the PTA, PTO combined leadership, saying, hey, we're looking at our gifts policy about setting a, you know, a threshold,
Mhm.
you know,
Right.
and getting, and having a conversation with them, what do you guys think
Yep.
of
When's the
of
next meeting?
threshold?
I'll talk to my head.
Should be coming.
It's coming up.
Usually
I think it's in
coming
early February.
Yeah, I can't tell you.
I think it's,
I'll look at
Oh, so
I think
it
it's
could be
February.
February.
Yeah,
Robert, isn't it in early February?
it's usually.
it. Usually it is, but let me, I'll check just for.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that's something, it's like, hey, we're, not that, you know, like, get some of their input on what they think
Yeah.
a de minimis value is. I mean, I would say probably about, yeah, I don't know.
And that's universally applied, because, I mean, coaches and things like that are extend outside of 322, so now you're getting input from
There was-
band boosters and all those people too.
Football boosters.
Don't forget, there's a third thing that we discussed. One was, so there's the anti-corruption language, there's the value, and there's, is it a hard reject or is disclosure okay?
Right,
Right.
that's the question,
Right.
yeah,
And if disclosed, exactly what happens with that information.
right. We put it in the file so we know if there's an allegation later on.
Which do you want?
I don't know. I think someone should come up with a recommendation and bring it back, and with rationale for that recommendation.
Ken, as administrators, on the ethics board, we have to, isn't there an amount on that that we take care of administrators?
That's only for certain types of things. I don't know that it would cover, I don't know that it would cover a gift here. It might cover it for vendor. I'm not sure. I have to see. It's, I'll look that up.
Well, it just might be a good amount of, or we may have to tier this, is kind of what I'm hearing
We
as
may.
well.
Maybe,
Right.
it's a
So,
possible.
Well, be careful about establishing different limits for,
Yeah.
for teachers. That's kind of.
I
Well,
don't think how to do that.
Just trying to find-
UDEA might make that a very, might take umbrage with that.
I mean, I think it's a general statement, you can't be influenced by,
but they,
Just a gift.
but a
Any
teacher
gift
does
of
not
any
have
value,
ethics board,
you know.
and administrators do it, so.
I understand why you would do it, I'm just saying the optics of it might sway you from doing
it's
it.
an anti-corruption statement, and then, right, so then the question is, if whatever we set as a threshold, what do we mean then? I mean, do we have disclosure, or do we say?
I think just disclosure, I mean, as we stated,
Right.
so there's a, and that's the point, if we're just trying to regulate, we're not trying to police it, we're just
Right.
trying to say, just let us know about it.
If we have a problem, then we can discipline someone, because then we can show, like, they got a gift.
So it is okay for them to accept a $10,000 gift?
Well, that's,
No.
no, it's right.
Well,
It's
I mean, but
right.
you just
But
have to
that's
disclose
what
it, then, you know, that's what it
Exactly,
says.
agreed,
so-
that's right.
Maybe there's two thresholds, there's one for, above this you have to disclose, and above this you have to reject.
Yeah,
Yes.
do we make them disclose that they were even offered it?
The gift of value of 250 or more.
Is that,
State ethics. State ethics.
what's the ethics? Really?
Mhm.
There's
So that's for
there's a-
TV.
Mhm.
That may be where T, yes, is that what you
Yeah,
said?
yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah, that's probably. In fact, now I recall that exactly.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's,
Maybe it's
for those of us who like
about 25
consistency.
disclose, and like a 50 reject. I'm not sure exactly what is the state ethics act?
You have to disclose.
You have to disclose
No,
it.
on the ethics
Disclosure.
form. And sign it.
Mhm.
Okay, so yes.
I mean, if someone's getting a $10,000 gift, they're probably not going to disclose it.
Well, yes, but you have a lot of other issues.
So,
Yeah.
is that like, you go, what?
And of course, I'm just deliberately picking that as an absurd.
Into a bus ride.
Right.
There's
No,
going to be
no.
a gray area somewhere.
Well, there could be like, hey, you can use, I mean, like, what if it's like, hey, you can use my beach house for the week or the weekend? I mean, things
Yeah.
like that, right? I mean, it's those type of values and,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing it makes it hard is because we're a small community too, where people know each other and a lot of the employees live here. So it can make it complicated for people.
The next combined leadership meeting, I think, is in April, at least according to the district calendar.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you want to push it back that far. I think we can talk about it.
Well, let's look to see.
Yeah.
Is it April? Oh, gosh.
Wow. Yeah, that's usually.
Yeah,
Right,
Should we have a quarterly?
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
You're not on it
I'm not on it
anymore.
anymore.
Okay.
All right, so we'll push these both back.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I think we want a policy coming back with anti-corruption language. And then,
The recommendation is the hard reject.
that I think can be the policy. The policy could have that
Mm-hmm.
in it, and then the AR, we can talk about threshold disclosure.
Yeah.
So we can have a more general anti-corruption statement here, so we can bring the policy back. The AR is gonna take a little bit of time anyway to figure out what we wanna do with that. Okay, plan. Back to PC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we can all agree we need to change this.
Yes, there we go. We
That's
agree on something. So, all
There you go.
right, 331.
Our gifts to the board president.
Uh-huh.
Will we carve out a special exception for this?
Mhm.
That'd be
All right,
nice.
so this is, there was something,
I'm sorry, what are we?
331?
331, yeah, the expenses. Yeah, I think that was the only thing. I didn't have anything on the policy. Steve didn't have anything on the policy. But if anybody else does. We can discuss it.
I just have a question on the board. Do we need to write maximum rate determined by the IRS? Isn't it just a rate? Whatever the rate is. There's not a maximum minimum, right?
It's just their rate.
Right, I think so.
Well, no, there's different rates.
No, are we talking for mileage or are we talking for the recommendations?
Personal vehicle, is that?
Shall be at the maximum rate determine the level
Mileage.
of IRS.
It doesn't specifically say the mileage rate, but that, I
It's
think
the
that's what it's
same.
talking about, yeah.
I'm just suggesting
Yeah,
striking the word maximum, that's all.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Where's it?
Under
Well,
guidelines, second
Guidelines in the
paragraph.
policy.
And I also believe
the
the,
universe at the maximum rate
That was the policy.
for the use of private vehicles and performance of work assignments.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's a maximum at the rate.
There's just a rate.
Yeah, that's my assumption.
All right.
They actually publish 3 different rates for 3 different
Isn't there,
categories.
a daily
Sure, I still want-
maximum
I still want to
for
use the rate
meals?
at the appropriate
It's
rate.
on, it's right there.
But that's a
Reimbursement.
And the maximum rate is that
I thought it was
50.
for a different rate.
Technical rate.
That's
Yeah.
what it's,
I think it's.
Right.
a different
I like that.
Yeah, so we're changing
What?
maximum.
Is that
to the
correct?
couple.
This,
What?
There you go.
Meals
Applicable.
reimbursement?
but what I'm
That's
talking
later.
about right here is vehicle, in this particular.
Yeah,
We're changing maximum to applicable.
yeah.
This is the policy?
That's
Yeah,
not-
yes, in the guidelines
Guidelines.
section.
Second paragraph. and
What is
under,
it, 59 cents now? What is
I believe it
it?
is
We just approved it.
Actually, we haven't, we'll approve it on January 29th.
Scroll down.
I'm always in the future.
Well, it's because it's such a,
Mhm.
we discussed it at finance last night.
Mhm.
Under guidelines, second paragraph,
second
second
line.
line in that paragraph. Where we-
You
yeah.
guys
The W reimbursed at the applicable.
What's that?
We'll have like 7 weeks between. Okay, okay.
You survive. Just the bill list is kind of weird.
I've had to release some checks and have written that down. but anyway.
Okay.
All right, is that the only change to the policy?
For me, yeah.
All right, so the policies are for first, so let's go to the AR then.
My feeling is that the specifics of a different rate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner is problematic for a number of reasons.
Good.
What's that?
I don't know if that rate is correct, at least.
There is a rate.
What my understanding was, I thought it was $30
No.
a day.
No. You're saying you don't like to have 3 different rates.
I don't like having 3 different rates. I don't like calling out 3 different meals. Sometimes, you know, you have 2 meals or 1 meal in a day because the schedule of the conference you're at or whatever works out that way, or there's going to be a sponsored dinner at the end of the day, or you're going to work through lunch or you get breakfast. And I don't think we should be structuring people's workday according to this, because whatever they're doing may not work.
Is this a new?
We have rates currently.
Yeah, because it's $30, that's what I'm saying.
Oh.
There's
It's
max-
30 a day,
Yeah.
right? It's 30 a day.
Right.
It's not 30 a meal, yeah.
This
No,
was
it's not
last
30 a
modified
meal.
by
It's
10
per-
years.
I think it's a new.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
we
it's one of
don't
them,
have that
you could
much.
say some number of dollars per meal,
This is-
the maximum of 3 meals.
Yes.
This actually can be revised through the latest date.
That's true.
Exactly, yeah.
This section can be revised. Thank you.
I think we will.
There we
And
go.
we will.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Are we finished with the policy that?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the policy.
We're good.
Yeah, I just wanted to point to the right one.
So if this doesn't match our current practice,
No, we can change it, yeah. Can't just sit,
yeah.
yeah.
Right, and
What is our
they're
current practice?
$30 a day.
And I would like to change the current practice, and I respectfully disagree. I
Yes.
would like to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner
You tell-
enumerated
Enumerated.
as a specific amount, because I don't think we need to be eating brunch for, you know, a breakfast type of situation. And having looked at hundreds of expense reimbursement requests, if not thousands through the years, it's just really nice if you have $10, you know, and lunch and dinner. one of the pieces I would also like to point out on the lunch, or at least throw into the conversation, is that oftentimes our conferences are one day, and if you're at work, you pay for your lunch, so why is it different when you go to a one-day conference? Why would there be a reimbursable for that? So, but that's from my perspective.
Well,
I don't-
setting at these numbers is, I mean, if we now have a $30 a day limit, this is significantly higher than that, right? This is $50 a day?
Yeah.
For overnight.
It's also, you know,
Per night, thank you.
if your conference happens to be in New York, you know,
Right.
You can get a pizza, slice of pizza.
yeah, right.
Yeah, well,
For $10, yeah.
Well, we could make it much more complicated and look at, again, going to the IRS and per diems based on
on the state,
yes, on the state.
that's how we did in New Jersey.
But we truly don't have that many conferences that, you know, end up in New York
Washington.
or Washington or,
Wisconsin.
I just, you know, I'm thinking back to all the times I've been to conferences, and this, I might have structured my day differently because of this, and I don't think that's right. I think you want to get the most out of the conference,
Mhm.
not structure your day according to what the reimbursement policy is. So I just think it's the wrong place to
Well,
try.
this is a new AR.
Right, exactly.
Right, so we haven't,
No.
we don't have this anywhere.
No, I
and
know, it's just,
if I also can speak to the fact, I think what we do is currently a practice, and again, in the business office, we're looking forward to having something that we can say is AR
Consistency,
or,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
or policy.
I certainly don't think breakfast should be limited to such a small thing. I mean, yeah, a combined limit of, with a maximum of 3 meals per day, or a maximum per meal, with a maximum of 3 meals per day, or something like that, would work a lot better for me.
I don't know, I think conversely, it's like, if the taxpayers pay for the conference, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that you should pay for your own meals.
well, we don't want it to limit people to be able to go that they can't afford things. I mean, I think that, like, it's one thing when you're at work, you can you can run home for work, or from work for lunch, or you can bring a bologna and cheese sandwich. If you're staying in a hotel, you're not going to be able to have the groceries and stuff, so we're forcing you essentially to, you know, eat out. I mean, this isn't something that's unique to our school district by any means. I mean, this is something that,
No, but like, you know, you also don't want to see prime rib and,
I agree.
you know, lamb chops show up.
right, but we're not doing that with currently the limit's $30 and currently the 25. They can eat prime rib, but they're going to be paying
Well,
that
again, though, I
now.
want to say that the $30 was kind of self-imposed again by management or by administration, so.
Right.
I'm just,
So, I mean, the other thing is, do we need to have times in here? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner? I mean, breakfast,
Well, that's the
that's the other thing is, right, I think there's like, breakfast is served from, you know, your receipt has to be time stamped at before, you know,
That's
11
too-
o'clock
that's
in the
too much.
morning.
That's too much.
Yeah.
And mostly people don't use 2 meals, they only do the one. In my experience.
Right.
You probably should specifically exclude alcohol.
Yeah, it's in here,
that's in there
at
somewhere.
the beginning, I think, so it's somewhere. No reimbursements
No,
will
I
be
see-
made
I
for
see.
alcoholic beverages.
I mean, I'm fine with, unless there's some problem with the current $30 a day practice.
I agree, I think we just leave it.
Modify the $30 a day practice.
Right. Unless we want to go up to $50 the way this says it, you know? I mean, that's the, I don't think we want to do that necessarily.
So including, shall you be a maximum, it'll be up to $30 per day.
Is there anything broken about that current, in terms of current?
No, other than the fact now that it has AR and policy, you're fixing that particular piece. And
Yeah.
actually, you've just made it easier as far as reviewing
Yeah.
reimbursements.
Yeah.
Limited to 30.
So they can have a $30 breakfast.
And then not eat for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I think. You have a
That's
big
the
meal,
point.
and
Right.
then you work through
Right.
lunch, and then you have a catered sponsored dinner at the
Right.
conference.
Mhm.
Right, because that happens sometimes, yeah.
Mhm.
Which you need to disclose it.
Yep.
Or reject, you're not allowed to eat.
You bring in.
Well, I wanted to-
At some conferences, dinner is included, or lunch is included.
But if it's a day conference that ends at 4 o'clock, they don't get dinner. Where do you say that?
Usually,
Yeah, right.
but oftentimes lunch is included.
Yeah,
Or, Danish in the morning, which could be called breakfast.
No, but his point, I think, is, it ends at 4 o'clock, and then they go out and they use a $30 allocation for a dinner for a conference that's ending.
you can't do that, so somehow that has to be in it.
Unless they're traveling.
But they're traveling.
Like that, that's what I'm saying.
Well, they could be at the RU.
If we were,
At the RU.
Am I taking it out or no?
Well, I think,
$30.
we could go back to that piece as being overnight, I think Ken. used
Yeah, I don't
that
see
term.
reference to it.
Well, I think it's something you were going to add.
Okay.
If you're worried about them being in, for example, the IU.
Right.
No, I thought the $30 per day was,
Overnight conference.
no, well, I thought the reason why you needed to split it up to breakfast, lunch, and dinner was it was overnight. Since you're not doing that, then I think you need to split it. You're not gonna, I mean, if somebody, you'd rather somebody left in the morning for the conference, even if it was in Hershey.
Right.
That they, figure they would tell. So I don't know why, I think since you're not breaking it down to breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I don't think you need it.
So I can just scratch those.
So, but are you saying you think there needs to be some sort of teeth to reject that after 4 o'clock, the conference ended at 4, it was in Hershey, we're not paying for dinner, you want to have something in the policy art that's the administration saying, no, we're not paying for that?
Well-
Want to get it done?
Hershey, it's 2 hours. The IU is a better example.
Okay, yeah, pick an example, that's fine, so.
The IU is,
We have a
if it is at 4
radius.
o'clock,
Yeah.
they should not be buying dinner.
Right.
Right, are you
Are
saying
we
we need
having
something,
this problem?
but do we need
Is this
something in
part
the
of-
policy that says?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, is this an issue that we are currently having, that people are,
I doubt it.
Usually it's not the dinner
Yeah.
question, it's usually a lunch question. But I understand, but if the conference ends at 4
Right.
o'clock,
if it's at the MCIU, it's one thing, if it's in Pittsburgh.
What if it's at the RU and lunch is not served? They're working, they should pay for their lunch, no?
Well, and they can reimburse it too, right? You don't have to reimburse, say, we're not going to reimburse for that.
Right.
Because you would see the receipt, what time they ate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
while
Out of
attending,
county conference, I don't know.
while attending a multi-day overnight,
And you can't just not say it.
But that's the problem, right?
Again, you just reject it and say, we won't reimburse you for this receipt. Right?
Here's what we do.
okay.
The employee wishing to attend the conference shall prepare an itemized estimate of the cost that we incurred, including not limited to fees, meals, lodging. If somebody's going to the IU, he comes back to you and says, well, it's going to cost me this much for gas and this much for meals. The supervisor can look at it and say, no,
Exactly.
I deny your request. Come back with a more reasonable budget. And then they get it, that's your check and balance. That works for me.
Mhm.
Because they do have this, the supervisor has to sign off on your request.
Correct.
I'm just pointing out that some of our supervisors take a more laid-back approach to those type of things than others, but we'll in-service them on that.
And Ken had a good question here, that the estimate shall be submitted to the BA, a designated advance of the conference. Do we need to add and be approved? I mean, is it, do we do that now? I mean, sometimes we don't approve conferences until,
Conferences are not always approved by the business office first, they're approved by a supervisor, and then, principal or cabinet member. It's all reimbursements obviously go through the business office, and we have all the documentation related to approvals before us.
I think so you must get prior permission of the immediate
Steve's comment
supervisor.
was,
Yes,
there's,
that's
his
his
comment was he was fine with those amounts.
No, didn't you know about the submitted
And
versus submitted or
approved,
approved?
submitted and approved.
And approved.
Submitted and approved.
Where is this?
Just Steve's comments.
Under additional requirements.
Steve's comments?
He had superintendent, or designee.
Who's
or
the-
insert individual.
Who is the inserted individual? Who's that going to be after?
Superintendent or designee,
Oh,
Oh, really?
that's what he put in there.
Wow. Okay.
Must be, so prior permission, so the superintendent has to approve
The
it.
conferences are currently coordinated by
Curriculum.
curriculum.
Right.
So-
So he could designate, right, so from their immediate supervisor and
No,
superintendent or
conferences
designee.
are actually written.
Employee wishes to attend.
Yeah.
Right, but I think those are curriculum.
Yeah. So you don't need even the ones that are.
And then this allows him to
Even the ones that have
designate.
nothing to do with curriculum.
So you don't need that.
Still.
Approved, you don't need that, because we're already requiring approval by using the word prior.
So taking this out?
Take out the next highlighted part because we've already revised it to say here it goes. We're good, right?
I accidentally took something out here, the first.
Yeah. And
What was that?
supervisor, and superintendent or
Or
designee.
designee. Okay.
Yeah, and did we get the submitted and approved? I think so. Okay.
We're good, we did?
No, it just says administrative.
Well, we already say, it'll be approved by saying prior permission.
And they got ticketed and they
Oh,
sent it to the state.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
I don't know why that took out that.
All right. All right, so we can make this one that it was that the AR was, because we're not actually doing the AR right now, right? We're just doing the policy at the first read. So we can make the note that we reviewed it at this PC meeting. And then, so that way Steve has any other questions, we can always come back to it at the next policy committee meeting. All right, so are we good with the, so we'll do the first reading and then, unless there's any other major changes that we want to discuss for the AR, we'll be bringing it back to next policy. So, should we do?
Jury duty?
Yeah, I didn't have anything.
So Brenda, when somebody gets paid for jury duty, they give you the check?
No, they should give us only the amount that's related to the jury duty if they're being reimbursed for mileage. So it's only,
That's not, I thought any compensation an employee receives from jury duty service in excess of
compensation.
In excess of
actual
actual.
expenses should be remitted to the business office.
In excess of the actual expenses. So if they receive, let's just say in Bucks County, $10.32 with the.
For the day.
At $7 is the amount of jury duty, they write us a check for the $7.
Okay, then what do you do with the $7?
We deposit it.
No, shouldn't it go back?
Because they're getting paid.
They're getting paid their usual amount, so we just deposit it as a.
I know, but the courthouse paid them for jury duty.
And then the individual, if I'm the employee, when I've served on jury,
Write a
I
check.
get the check for $10.32, so I write out a check to Upper Dublin School District
Right.
now, and it's deposited into the general fund.
So are they forced to do that? Because I know in like Montgomery County, for instance, when you have jury duty, you can make a donation of that $9 or whatever it is to, you know, MCAP or one of the other organizations. So are we requiring them that they're not allowed to donate that, that they have to take that money and then give that money to the district?
Well, that's what it currently exists.
Does that happen?
Yes.
everyone knows actually. Right,
If you
check.
put, because part of it has to do with your attendance when you're called, and you put in jury duty as one of the absence reasons. And yes, we do match the amount. So sometimes somebody puts in for jury duty fully believing they're going to go and then they're excused or
Right.
whatever. But,
Yeah.
yeah, we spend more time probably reconciling that than
That doesn't sound like it's worth the time to do. Is it?
Well, it does help maintain control over that type of attendance, because sometimes, depending upon the luck of the draw, it's been interesting. There have been some of our employees that might be called for jury duty really at the county level, have been called several consecutive years, and others aren't called for years and years. And then we've had some that have had the unfortunate luck of being called for federal jury duty down in Philly in addition to one of the counties, so.
I have a small grammatical one on guidelines, just changing the they into the employee on the first sentence,
Yeah.
singular or singular. So change that they right there to the employee. Shall be the-
Yeah.
That's all.
So what were you saying for going with they?
Okay.
We still have the they.
I saw some of the other words, but I mean, the things of the plural.
You're out when you
singular.
want to. Yeah. We need the style guidelines.
So we're comfortable leaving the compensation being remitted thing?
So we're doing the current one, I
Yep.
Okay.
That's fine.
guess. Okay. Recognition for accomplishment. So that's first reading. 352. Session 3.
Yeah, it's something basically wrong with this one. We call it recognition of accomplishments. We're really only talking about
Here's a shirt.
years of service.
And recognition of staying here for a long time.
Oh, no,
We do other kinds of recognition of accomplishment. You know, we have somebody who saved someone's life. We have somebody, you know, we do different recognition of some of our people, but this seems to only address years of service.
And what about retirement?
And retirement's referenced in here, so.
I know, I saw.
You get a plaque or plate.
Yeah, they get-
Years of service or retirement.
Yeah,
So we can,
Cop- yeah, recognition
okay,
for years of
so,
service or retirement,
right.
what it should be called.
And that's what we wanted. We don't want to put in anything else about accomplishments. Expanding it.
It could be outside the policy. It doesn't need to be in policy.
Right.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, we just
Good.
recognize people who
Okay,
go beyond.
okay. So
It's
that's-
really just the title.
It's
Just the
only-
title.
title's the only.
The title, it's the
We
title.
recognize our coaches for
Okay.
their successes.
Change title. Got it. All right.
I also, I just want to make sure, I think, you know, I know the answer, but under purpose, it says, we'll recognize them for years of service at periodic intervals, and then superintendent will develop regulations that indicate the intervals. Do we, you know, periodic has meaning, as we've discussed in the past, and our current practice is every 5 years, which is periodically starting with 15 years.
I
So
would just end it in district.
do we want to lock ourselves into periodic intervals? I think it's fine, but.
I would just delete it, honestly, and just have it after the period after district.
I'm sorry. No, maybe it's a syntax error. Years of service to the district at period intervals, 5 years, 10 years, 15
Yeah.
15 years, 20, why don't you need it?
What's wrong?
I'm just saying, it is periodic now, but
Oh,
that's,
no.
Yeah, but period can be around here.
well, no, but then it says the
Indicate
interval
which
will be established in the AR.
Uh-huh.
Well, we also want to mention retirement.
Yeah, we have to
Should we add
mention-
on to that sentence?
Yeah, first sentence, you have to add on retirement somewhere.
The periodic intervals And retirement.
And our retirement, yes.
But my question is, does retirement matter about basic years? I mean, somebody could retire after a year.
Well, we can specify that in the AR. We start at 15 years. The AR will.
No, we say to recognize employees for the years of service at periodic intervals
And.
and retirement.
And at retirement.
But that's what I mean, does it matter how long they've been here for their retirements? So
Or
they-
at retirement, and then we'll specify it in the AR.
Okay.
Right time, and then that's what we do. If
Yeah.
they retire, we
Yeah,
recognize them.
even if.
No matter how long they've been in the
Right.
district.
We don't recognize them if they've been here for 8 months, do we? They retire at 8 months, are we gonna?
No, it's just years and number double. So,
The way the AR reads though, it's just, it says a plaque or plate for retiring, it doesn't say how many years.
Well, we can
Yeah.
set the
We'll
date.
we'll fix that in the AR.
We'll fix it in the AR.
We can do that.
With more than we need.
Doesn't say how many years.
Okay, anything else? Policy?
But you gotta add retirement under delegation as well,
Yeah.
for their years of service or retirement.
Yeah.
Or retirement?
Yeah.
And then the previous paragraph where you added at retirement, and at retirement, that should be or at retirement.
We could get both.
Yeah. Retired years.
All right. That's-
All right, that's good for the policy then, right? So we're good.
Make sure you change the title of that one.
Yep,
Oh, you did? Okay.
I mean, not yet, but I will.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
All right, so then the AR.
They are.
So I think what's suggested too is that we don't actually put what we're giving at different years of service, just the actual intervals themselves.
Right, that's all the policy said will be established here. is,
Right.
you know, so I think it should say every 5 years, starting at 15 years. And then for retirement, recognition for retirement will happen only after some number of years of service. You told me what the
Right.
threshold is, but.
Yeah, how long do we want to, I mean, what do you?
If someone retires after 2 years, do we recognize it?
Yeah, what's our current procedure? Our practice.
I think with the list of retirees that we generate, never in the past limited how much time they've been with us. I think we've just included that.
But do they get a plaque? Does everybody get a plaque? Or what do we give them? What do we give people at retirement right now?
Isn't that silver plate?
Plate,
Plate,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a plate, yeah, plate.
So for everyone, I mean, that's the thing, is if they're retiring after being here for a year and a half, are we giving them a plate right now?
right now, I think we are, yeah.
It doesn't happen very often.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, really means you hired someone at retirement age, you
Yeah,
know,
right,
that is possible.
that's what it means.
in public education.
Right.
Yeah, maybe.
Huh?
Could be public.
Could be public. I'm sorry to interrupt. I think I left my black bag. Thank you.
Okay.
So I think, I agree, instead of having a schedule, it
Right.
should say,
The intervals.
recognition, yeah. We'll recognize years of employment, years of service, every 5 years, starting at 15 years, and that.
Okay.
So we're going to go to the AR.
So it's pretty much keeping it as it stands, except taking out the word November. Right, isn't that a plan for recognizing service at 15, 20, 23? And upon retirement will be the number.
Okay. Or the specifics.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying what is the current,
Well, I wouldn't even bother, because like 40 years isn't here. I mean, I wouldn't specify 15.
and 5-year intervals
At
starting
five-
at 15,
At 5-year
right?
intervals starting at.
We do 40,
At the appropriate time, starting at, well,
50.
Employees will be recognized each year
At appropriate time.
at an appropriate time, for every 5 years of service, starting at 15 years.
And at retirement.
And at retirement.
That's good.
And take all
And
the
strike
out.
the residents again.
Yeah, like every 15 years.
Do we want to have a set limit? Because we actually have some employees that go to 40.
They get it
That's what I
back,
said.
they get something, 40 years if you're.
That's why I said that, yeah, so
Yeah,
just cover
you're
it rid of it.
yeah.
Every 5 years.
Yeah.
So there would be a need to come up with something for that at 40.
Well, we're not going to be specific on the
We're
policy.
not
We
gonna
wouldn't
be
need to, but-
specifying.
We can figure that out, yeah.
We're gonna get rid of certificates or plaques and plates. And we decide what we, what file, what we.
Yeah.
25
Here for
years.
40 years, man.
Yeah.
You get a little sandwich.
No, you get, at 40, you get full.
Yeah, full
Yeah.
size. At 40, you get a rock picture.
All right.
Strike that one.
All right. All right, so I put that we reviewed this AR, and so when it comes back to the next PUC meeting, we'll know that we actually looked at this. Not that we can't change it then. Okay, so let's go into first reading the policy, that is. Required certifications. And the policy is pretty,
Yeah, I know.
okay.
Steve, I don't know.
Nope. He said it's fine.
There's nothing really in the policy, pretty straightforward.
Right. All right, so AR,
It's just easier to just call it the.
yeah. Steve had a change in the AR, just said he would add an additional document certified required by law. So, if some additional clearances come up that's not specified here. To give us flexibility before we would change the AR.
So do we have a process time to remind our teachers or anyone about this thing?
Yes.
You're due, you better get it.
Takes a bit of
It's a lot of work.
Yes.
Actually, our new software will probably do better at first. Our e-finance software was, we listed it right in there with the certification.
Okay.
But sending out reminders, we do that every quarterly, every 3 months.
Right.
As they're coming up to remind somebody that they need to update them. Now we're coming full circle.
And theoretically, if they still don't submit one, what do we do?
I've taken the position we don't have them continue employment until they provide. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a provision that if they're with somebody that is certified, right, Ken? It can be overseen, but
It's a condition of employment that they have it. So it subjects them to discipline. If you have the option of letting them teach or having somebody with them or doing whatever they do. But if it's, if it's an aid, well, it creates problems. It's going to have, it's pretty fact specific. I'm not sure you could certainly discipline it for you. It depends how much of a paper trail you can show that you weren't, you told them what's going to happen. You haven't gotten your certifications in yet, they're going to come in, you're going to need to put this, that, the other. So,
Maybe something happened in the last few years that they failed to
well,
report.
that's frequently why they don't do it.
Yeah.
They have an obligation to report.
Right.
Within
So then it's something
30
else, then it's something else that can be considered disciplinable, which is that you get reports obligations.
We have the statement on substitute employees, but not necessarily the agencies in which we work with. Should we or could we add, or is it just a given that all the agencies would provide folks with these clearances as well?
I believe it's under contracted services.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
And that would be under this policy, be under contracted services.
Okay, that's fine.
The company that we use verifies, does all the clearances.
yes.
if we have a contract with someone, construction, for example, they have to provide them to us.
We're able to add that in there, Steve, just a catch-all. Can we add that? So prospective, this is in the AR, prospective school employees must obtain the document certification listed below. And then you can become any, and all others required by law
I can add that.
prior to employment. Yeah.
I'll look at that document.
Perfect. Yeah, you see that. Great.
And I'll make those
And that's just in the
changes.
AR anyway. Okay, great. Okay. All right, so we'll move that forward.
Just a point of information, we've not hired people on a provisional basis, just because I've always taken the position, I don't want to take a chance
Yeah.
until they've satisfied all the required paperwork. So, since the time that I've been here, I've not put that provisional status in place. So all the background checks have been, and paperwork has been completed.
Okay. 356, outside employment and outside business interests.
Well, this is new.
Okay.
What's the background?
Yep.
Okay. This is a policy that starting to see pop up in other districts. Problem, there's a whole multitude of problems here. One of which is, the biggest example of which is the foreign trips. Which is a key to sort of section here, but it could be any outside employment which could create a conflict of interest. So, for example, somebody decides to work with some travel agency to chaperone a trip to Italy. You have no control over this trip. You have no ability to know who's even going. You wouldn't even know who's going. You have no idea what's going on. And the parents all think it's a school trip. They just do. So you've also got a situation where employees could be using their job as a teacher to promote an outside business. Whether it be a coaching business, a dog walking business, whatever it is, they could be using their role as a teacher to promote that. This is just basically trying to say, look, if you're going to do this stuff, you're going to have to follow some rules. You're going to have to, it can't be a conflict. You can't be, if you're doing your tutoring service on the side, we need to know because you're marketing yourself to our parents. You can't use district resources, you can't put it up district email, you can't do all these things. It's go down to the school sponsored trips. You can't be promoting this trip in our, in the classroom. You can't be, putting flyers, you can't be handing out flyers, you can't be talking it up in class. All this stuff. But at the same time, all of the above, even if you're doing all this stuff, you still need to tell us you're doing it because otherwise we don't know if you're actually telling parents who are going on the trip to Italy that this has nothing to do with school. We have to have a way of knowing that. I've seen this happen too many times where and by the way, these foreign trips, they are a breeding ground for misconduct because there's alcohol, it tends to be older children, and there's basically or drugs. It's just basically it's a very fertile grounds for really bad stuff. And again, you're going to come back to it. The parents are always going to say, "I thought this was a school trip." So that's or you don't have any control over how they're charging. Probably I've seen situations where parents were either overcharged or somebody took money out of the fund and just spent it on themselves or whatever. I mean, all these things. These reasons why you want to disassociate yourself with them, but at the same time, you need to know they're going on.
Okay.
digital, spend some time with this one to review.
In
Absorb like.
the list at the top, there's a full list at the top, items. And one thing this doesn't include, but it feels like it should, is that the employee does not use data that they otherwise wouldn't have access to. I'm not sure how to phrase that legally, but, student lists, students who have special education needs,
That would be a district resource. You can make it more clear, but that's in number 3, where it says they may use their position
It's
for
defining
district
district
resources. Okay. Including the student data, including the district email or confidential student data.
So we have nothing on this right now. This is new.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think you have a
No.
multiple concentration.
We have addressed some of this in the past as far as trips.
Uh-huh.
So play this through, we have lots of teachers who tutor,
Mhm.
so we just take that and roll through this process. They would have to fill out this form if they were going to tutor. That would be way, way new.
Yep, and let them know, these are the kids you're tutoring.
You don't have a tutor policy.
We do have a tutoring policy,
Yeah.
but it's not, I don't think it requires them to disclose.
Do they conflict with each other?
Well, that's what we'll have to make sure.
Should they? I think there's a cross-site partnership.
We had to where it was.
There's a
Yeah,
policy.
policy.
I didn't think we had tutoring
I
policy.
don't think we have tutor.
Well, then, you don't.
We have
There's
something,
something
yeah,
that talks
and then
about it.
we've talked about that in this committee.
And now I'm like,
Right now, we can give out tutoring
Lists,
lists through the
that's-
curriculum department, like teachers put their names on it.
Which is always.
Yeah, like, what's to stop somebody from tutoring a kid in a class?
And they actually, some
And
do.
they-
Well, that's a conflict.
Yes.
yeah, we have that.
Go to gifts.
Well,
Gifts, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, it's certainly related to the undue influence kind of.
Tutorial.
Yeah, but even there, it's like, that's the, it's pretty gonna feel like you do your tutoring, it's like,
Tutor.
does that sit by you as a tutor?
116. 116.
116.
That one.
I think it'll be,
There's
to
no
address
way.
that.
There's just a policy.
We touched on it.
I know this topic is also addressed in the Pennsylvania Code of Ethics for educators as far as benefiting from your position. So it's listed there as well.
Yeah, but somebody can say, well, I'm not benefiting from my position, I'm being completely straightforward about this, and I'm holding this kid to the same standards as everybody else, and, I mean, it's just like, yeah, that's what I'm saying, if that's all you're relying on, you're on a pretty thin thread.
So 116
You might want to have
that's
a
the
whole, you might actually want to have a whole
2002.
section, you might actually want to have a whole section on tutoring that has some additional rules that
Yeah.
aren't in here.
Then we wouldn't need 116, right now it's policy 116.
116.
I look out.
I don't know. We need to-
Well, we haven't touched it since 2002.
No, we talked about it, though, I know we have.
Those are kind of recommended from a list that we keep.
It says nothing about our teachers.
You're right.
We have something that just says you can't tutor your own kids, your own students.
We do?
Like,
I know we talked about
No,
that.
yeah, I know we reviewed something.
We reviewed something,
yeah,
right?
that's got, policy 116 has nothing to do with.
Right, that has
policy.
nothing to do with it.
Policy.
Right.
Right.
That's the only thing I can see in the tutor.
No, but there's something about it.
Nope. Okay. It's the only policy that mentioned the word tutor or tutoring.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll come back, I'll bring this back to the section on tutoring as well.
Okay.
Probably.
I think you have something in there, 357, it looks like that you put something in draft.
You,
All right, why don't I bring this back to you with the sections on tutoring and the section on private coaching.
Right.
I have another example that I'm curious about. Let's suppose that a music teacher is a participant in some outside orchestra and thinks that some student would be a great candidate to also participate in that orchestra. The teacher gets no financial benefit for having the student participate in the orchestra. It just seems like a good idea, it would be a great fit. This feels like it prevents that, but I'm not sure it
And then
should.
you have to be getting paid. Outside employment, performing services for a fee.
Okay.
Steve didn't have any comments on this one.
The AR does include the confidential information statement that I mentioned.
Okay.
So it's covered in the AR.
This policy's been kind of vetted and worked over by a couple of districts already. Give you some assurance.
That's nice, yeah. Use that one.
Okay.
And so I'm going to put back the tutoring and private coaching sections.
It's just a way
So,
date.
looking at the AR, I'm still looking at thinking about the example I gave of the orchestra. There's a long list that says, under additional rules, it does say additional rules for non-district sponsored activities, but, there'd be no posting or distribution of information regarding a non-district sponsored activity. So the teacher can't say to the student, hey, I got a great idea for you during the school day. Is that, or this whole section doesn't apply because they're not getting paid for this?
No, it has to be outside business interest. A non-district sponsored activity means an outside business interest, which is defined as having something where the district employee gets paid for, or is any.
So then this whole thing doesn't apply if they're not paid?
Correct.
Okay.
There's something that was on the list that it has kids here.
Yeah.
4 or 5 kids that over the year. That's something.
Yeah. All right.
Okay,
We're moving this forward.
that's it. Are we okay with the first
No, I think
reading?
it's-
No, I need to.
I'll bring it back. Okay, that's right, that I'm like-
Tutoring and private coaching.
Okay.
Yeah, the private coaching.
Coaching, tutoring. All right, so I'll come back. All right.
Tim, while you look at that, number 3 under those bullets under the AR as well, the district resources. I'm not sure how you're going to monitor or how the staff may not use district internet, network resources, et cetera. It just seems impossible.
Well, suppose we get complaints about people, hey, why is your teacher, what happens is you get a complaint from somebody, you go in, and then you search their email.
Okay.
But generally it would be in response to a complaint, you know.
I'm just,
No, you'd be surprised how often that happens.
well, I'm just saying that district internet, but I'm not sure how you're going to be able to, to dispel that though, because it's a wide open network.
You'd be surprised.
Okay. I'm just saying in terms of monitoring, that's all.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's fine.
Generally from a complaint.
Okay, that's fine, we'll give it. Just didn't want us to write something that we can't enforce. That's all.
It's not 100% enforceable, but you'd probably be disappointed to learn how enforceable that
That's
is.
fine.
Right.
It's like speed.
It's like
speed. Yeah, you're not gonna catch everybody at speed.
Yeah.
Just something that will tell you, yeah.
Starbucks knows a lot about what you do on the internet.
That's
So,
scary.
yeah, the cookie, right?
I know, that is scary.
It's not just the.
Okay. All right, so that comes back. All right, so we have another new policy, Local Board Procedure 007. Conflicts of interest for board members.
That's what we said.
Double this up. You gotta name it cooler. I'm gonna do it double this up.
This is new, correct?
Yeah, this is brand new.
Do we have nothing regarding conflict of interest for board members, or just
Nothing.
whatever's in? school code?
Whatever, yeah, this is a,
Whatever's in the state ethics act, so there's that one policy about federal contracts, which applies to about 6 people.
Yeah. And actually, that was one comment the only comment I had is understanding the standards of conduct at the beginning, it talks about that in the federal award business, this second paragraph. But most of this isn't about federal awards, and I feel like to avoid that, that should be toward the bottom.
okay, that makes sense.
So right in this, under standards of conduct, no board member may participate in the selection of board or administration of contracts awarded by a federal award. And then I kept reading, thinking federal award, and with only several paragraphs later that I realized, wait, this has nothing to do with federal award anymore.
We can put that at the end of
Yeah,
the
either,
section.
or be explicit that,
Federal contracts.
Right. Yeah, that's it. So.
because even starting the next paragraph, it's
Yeah.
not federal.
Put that to the top of page 2.
Not going to be page 2 in here. Right.
Look for standards of conduct, go down,
No board member.
second paragraph, where it says no board member.
Block that off. Move it.
The whole section?
Yeah, little paragraph.
Okay.
Move it to right before improper influence heading. Now, the next heading. Okay, so insert it right before improper. Okay, then before the board member say special rules applicable to.
Right there.
Yeah, let's do a whole underlying heading. Special rule for contracts supported by federal award.
Federal
Award.
award.
And then no board member should be the next paragraph.
Space, no space, no space. There's an extra space at the back, we can go back to where we took it from. There's an extra space that's here.
I have a small one under definition, immediate family, I think we should add guardian, because I think even board members potentially could have a guardian, right? With the same sense of influence.
Yeah.
And then under guidelines, my question is more procedural. Do we actually give this to each board member?
We would.
I do not think we do, so I think
No.
we should just.
Well, it's neighborhood, so.
Well, it would
But
be,
even in general, I think we should make a statement in regards to how we disseminate our board policies and board procedures to board members.
right.
Don't you do that in Delaware Water?
I think we talked about, we made that
That's
change.
fine.
We're just gonna put it in the board procedure, yeah.
Don't want us to state something.
Yeah,
We're
we're
gonna
not,
put this
we're
specific.
gonna violate.
You want the George Costanza? That was against the law.
When you're saying, when you were talking about guardian, were you talking about a guardian of the board member or a guardian of the child of the board member? Which you might,
Neither.
Probably either or, but I just noticed when we just state parent without the guardian at this point, which is why.
Right.
Yeah. because there is in theory the case where a board member is estranged or otherwise separated from a child and the guardian of the child. And
So-
I'm wondering whether you meant to include that guardian in the statement or not.
Not necessarily, I'm thinking more,
They have a guardian, not a
Exactly.
parent. They wouldn't have a guardian, because guardian's a legal
Oh,
term,
for
and once they're 18, they
That's
don't
true.
have it.
That's true.
So, but what we could do is the other way, if they don't, it's not their legal child, it's
Yeah.
their, legally, they're the guardian of the child.
I see.
We could do it, we can have it.
So child doesn't encompass that type of child? Legally speaking?
I don't know.
That we look to the lawyers.
Ward?
Is there a
What's
question?
the
The question, yes,
what's
so
the
under-
opposite of guardian? If you're someone's guardian, what are they to you?
If I'm the guardian of a child, does this word child count as that, count for that type of child? Not my own child, but a child for whom I'm the guardian?
Is it ward?
I think the legal term is ward. but-
Ward, right?
Really.
Yeah. Maybe ward, right? I'm not crazy. Guardian and ward.
I think if you,
Ken is still.
no, it's because I just don't think in every other policy you use the word guardian, you use parent/guardian, and you say child. So if you say ward here,
Are we changing?
are you like trying to figure the other policy? And that's also, it's almost stigmatized part of the point, so you almost, I think you're just gonna have to rely on context here.
I think we have this
I
problem.
think you're safe to rely on context here.
All right, so it's our intent that child to include legal wards, right? That is our intent, the definition. Because that's what I'm saying, is that if this ever gets challenged, we now talked about it at a policy committee hearing, and so now it's on record.
Correct.
There we go. Okay. That is the intent of this committee. Mhm. It's been memorialized. That is the intent of this committee. The child includes legal wards.
Legislative history.
See? Okay.
I assume the 5% number in material financial interest comes out of code or other standard.
Yep.
So under guidelines, I mean, I look at 000, so I would say you just strike that first sentence under guidelines.
First.
All board members shall be provided a copy of this,
Yes.
because we cover that in 000.
We actually don't, I just look.
No, an up-to-date policy manual in electronic form shall be provided and maintained for public access.
It's public access.
Uh,
We don't say it's going to be distributed to board members.
Okay.
Because I look at that too. I look at number 4 too, it doesn't say.
Huh, yeah. Okay. At one point, you said that we would give everybody a thing, or maybe we changed that.
It probably, it's covered, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it's covered in the orientation, but, but it's not.
Right.
It's not explicitly.
It used to be.
Acknowledge receipt.
You're supposed to get a copy of the school code and a copy of the policy book. That's what it used to be, right? Is that what it currently
It
is?
used to be you get a copy of the school code.
Right.
Not that we don't do that.
Okay, I mean, that, I think that's when we took that out. I remember that in there, and us, some of us
Since we're
saying we didn't get that, so, yeah.
000 or 006, could we not just change this to add that it's also be distributed to board members?
You want to make it 000 now?
Yeah, I'm just asking if we're gonna,
I think your bet, truthfully, well, we want.
Members.
Another way to do it would be to get
4, right?
004 and just make sure board members are oriented about the policies,
Right.
including.
okay.
Board policies and information sessions dealing with the following: operations, budget, board policy.
We do a board policy.
It's in there that they're oriented within the policy.
How about under G, legal compliance? Wait a minute, curriculum instruction should be H. I don't think that was intended to be in one sentence.
Nope.
No.
So that should be H, and there should be, maybe make a new H, conflict of interest, and then I, curriculum instruction. Or you could say legal compliance and conflict of interest. Make them, they do are.
Yeah, I think that
That makes
makes sense.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Curriculum instruction should be.
So let's add G.
It might even have medical standards.
We're in Yeah, we're at 0, 0.
Can't maybe
Oh,
something
yeah,
about
next
tax.
I was like, whoa, sorry. I was
No,
just
no,
like
no,
thinking
so we're
yes.
adding to G, conflicts of interest, and then we can, yes, and then you can reference our new policy.
Legal compliance, ethics, and conflict of interest.
But under 007, but you can strike that first sentence under guidelines.
Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
That one can be gone.
Okay.
The Cardinals.
That first sentence.
Mhm.
There you go.
Steve had a comment about definitions. To drop is defined herein is immediate family, and then dash, a parent.
Yeah.
Because it's not consistent, yeah.
Yeah, it's just,
I mean, essentially, the dash means
Stylistic.
is defined herein,
Yeah.
as
all the other ones just have a dash.
dash, yeah. I'm not seeing.
Top of definitions.
The first definition, so just,
See, they all have
is,
dashes.
yeah, is defined herein as.
Take out the dashes or?
Yeah.
No, keep it, you want
Put it
to,
down.
Put a dash in that one.
yeah, delete those first
And delete the first
four
two.
words.
I'm sorry, what are you
Okay,
telling me to delete?
The first.
Is
four
defined
is-
herein as.
Yeah,
Delete is defined herein as. Get rid of it. If you really want to be consistent, I think those are M dashes, not N dashes.
I will. Time change, no big deal.
Are we getting rid of this defining?
Yeah, so you gotta just delete those first four words.
Yeah, that's all, okay.
Start at
Start at
parent, A.
Parent. Got it. All right. Let me see what I see.
1 minute to go.
And he suggested that, had some of this policy go into an AR, but
Yeah, I was looking at that, I'm trying to figure out what. and
I don't know what
I didn't
either.
see anything to me that.
because it's not really an AR, it's a local board procedure specifying
Yeah.
to board action or to the actual board, which is not really an administrative regulation
You
to
can't have-
regulate,
Superintendent really shouldn't be setting.
regulate, right,
Requirements for the board.
agreed,
I
okay,
couldn't find it.
That's a,
all right.
that's a lose-lose.
All right, we didn't get to 7 and 2. So we're doing this from first reading? Yes, we're good with 007? Okay. And then at the same time, we'll also put on for the agenda 004 with those amendments for first reading, since that's, okay, great. And then we need to get to 702, so this will be, didn't get too long. All right. We don't have any community members here for community input today. So with that, we'll be back for the next policy committee meeting, which is February something. February 11th.
We need the gifts then.
Right, February 11th.
But it's only on there because you just want to know the thresholds.
That's all right.
Yeah, that wasn't yours.
We didn't finish the last one, so
Do we, yeah, I mean, we can,
that's a
I
big.
don't think you were looking to change it that way.
7:02.
I had a lot of comments on
so,
it.
yeah, that's going to take more than 30
That one's a
seconds.
hard one.
So we'll bring that back to our next policy committee meeting. All right, so with that, we're adjourned.